Sure, yeah. I'm Sarah Buxton with Show Me Christian County. I am the new project coordinator of our organization, and we serve as the economic developers for the county.
Great. I think I was on next. Ann Evans with the Ozark Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, great.
Hey, this is Andrea Seitz from Show Me Christian County also. I work with Sarah and serve as the president and CEO for the Economic Development Organization.
Great. And Drew? Looks like he's on mute. We won't put him on the spot, I suppose. He can come back and introduce himself later. Maybe he stepped away here. So, well, great. Well, thank you guys all for joining this morning. I'm glad that we could find a time to go through the All Things Missouri site. So my name is Jamie Kleinsorge. I'm a senior project coordinator here at CARES, which is the long form is the Center for Applied Research and Engagement Systems. We're a center here on the campus of the University of Missouri, and we are part of Extension. And so I know Pam has been working with you all, and you guys had expressed interest in knowing a little bit more about this site and some of the tools and resources that we're providing to folks across the state through All Things Missouri. So I'll just go ahead and sort of dive into the demonstration portion of this. But before I do, I just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen. Oh,
I can see it.
Great. Perfect. Thank you guys for going on mute. That was wonderful. And then I asked a question. So, okay, Drew said he's on and he can see my screen. So that's great. So this is the site. It's publicly available, and we don't currently have any logins or any, password protected areas. So if you wanted to follow along with me, you're welcome to, but it's just allthingsmissouri.org is the URL. And so we rolled this site out last May and have been doing incremental improvements over that time based on some feedback that we've received both from Extension and from some other decision makers and folks around the state. And so really, to start off though, the site is organized into three major parts. So you can see here we have maps, reports, and tools and resources. So I'm just going to start off with showing you guys around our map room. You can see here under this mapping section, the first thing that you can click on is the Missouri Map Room, and that's where we're going to be spending a majority of our time. But you can see here that we also have some what we consider starter maps. And so we see these as being important because not everybody has a GIS background or even knows really how to use any sort of mapping software. And so what we've hopefully built is a very user-friendly interactive mapping site where you don't need a lot of predetermined knowledge in order to create a quick map. And so these starter maps are just maps with preloaded layers that you can click on and zoom around and add additional layers to, and you're not really going to mess anything up, right? So it's just an easy way for people to sort of get started with some topical maps around the four major impact areas that we have the site organized around. So first off, I'm just going to start by clicking that Missouri Map Room link, and what happens is it lands you here in our map room in this search data window. So currently within the All Things Missouri platform, we have about 33,000 data layers that span across a variety of topic areas. And so if you were to click this Browse by Topic option here at the bottom, you would see that we have categorized those 33,000 layers into this taxonomy around civic, social, economic, education, environment, and health. If I were to click on any of these carrots, you can see that it sort of opens a drop down, and I can click on even more carrots until I get down to what are those individual data layers that I could add to the map. You'll see that as I hover over them, this little I button sort of comes to life. And so I did want to point that out because what we try to do is be really good stewards of the data that we're collecting and aggregating here. We want to make sure that you get all the information that you need. A lot of times too, we recognize that sort of data literacy varies across, all types of people and professions. And so while we may know exactly what, poverty at 100% means, other folks might not know. And And so we want to make sure that, you know, you can get more information about each of the data layers that you'd be adding to your map. So you can see here, if I click that I button, what it gives me is a nice description of the data layer. It tells me the release date and the release cycle, so that gives you a little bit of an idea of how recent it is. Something like a boundary layer isn't updated all that often, you know, for this, but some of our other layers, for example, like unemployment that comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is updated pretty much on a monthly basis, and so you would see that that release cycle was more frequent. We have a link back here to the original source, and then we have notes or a data source description down here. So if we've done any additional analysis or if we have any additional description to provide, it'll be there at the bottom. So going through this sort of drop down is one way to search through our database. So I imagine you guys are all in economic development, and so this economic taxonomy or category would probably be the most interesting to you, but you might be able to find some other relevant information in those other categories like education or civic and social. The other way to search data, so I'm just going to go ahead and go back here to this main search data window, is to browse by source. And so if you are interested in knowing sort of where we get our data, what sources they come from, they are all mostly national secondary sources. And then within All Things Missouri, we do have a lot of state level agency data as well. And so you can see here as you scroll through, this basically works exactly the same way with those little carrots that drop down, and then you get down into those individual data layers here that you can add to the map. And just like with that other one, I can get more information about this individual data layer around beef cattle. So the last and probably most common way to search for data to add to the map is just to search by keyword. So for example, I can type in the word poverty, and what happens is I get about 360 different results related to poverty. And that's because poverty is one of those indicators that we have multiple sort of population groups for. So we look at age, race, gender, ethnicity, and then we also have it by multiple years. So you could look at sort of how things have changed over time. And then we also have poverty at many different levels. So 100%, 50%, 200%, and 185. So that's a lot of results to return. Nonetheless, you can see here that some of the most popular will filter to the top. So we have, you know, just straight up poverty level or population below poverty level by county. And then you can see here it's from the American Community Survey. And this is the most recent American Community Survey set that we have, 2013 to 2017. So in order to add this to the map, I would simply just check the checkbox next to the data layer, and down here you can see I can click add to map. And so what's going to happen now is it's going to load this layer on the map at the county level. So now that we're in the map room, a couple of ways that you can move around. So there's these plus or minus buttons over here. So if you wanted to zoom in, right, you can zoom in and zoom out just like you would on a Google map. You can use your mouse to sort of move around the map as well. So if you wanted to just look at the southern part of Missouri, the western part, you could do that. Or up here in the right-hand side, there's this enter a location bar. So we're here in Christian County, so I can type in Christian County, Missouri, and just like Google, it tries to predict sort of what you're looking for or where you're looking to go. So it zooms me into Christian County, and I always zoom back out because I like to see sort of what are the counties around it and how do they look, right? So at this point, we have a nice map of just county level poverty for Christian County, and we can click on the map and it'll give us some additional metadata, right? So we can see that we are in fact clicking on Christian County. We can see the total population in poverty percent, so it's around 10.43%. Our margin of error is small there, around 1.22, which is great. And then it gives us some total numbers as well, along with our margin of error there. So over here on the right-hand side, this is our legend, and we can do some additional work over here. So right now we're looking at poverty level by county, but this is an example of a layer that we have at multiple geographies. So for example, if you wanted to look at poverty at the tract level, you would just select that tract level geography. And what you see here is the map dynamically changes. There's not a lot of work that you have to do, right? You just have to select the geography that you want. And now we get to see poverty at a much more granular level, right? So I can click on a census tract now within Christian County, and it's going to pull up the metadata just the same way it did for that county level. So I get the census tract number, I get the percent of poverty for that census tract, again, margin of error, and then those totals as well. So that's a nice feature, is to be able to get those exact values, because we can only do our best when it comes to finding sort of the median to create these color ramps for these different data layers and different legends. And so I really always press upon people to make sure you click the map, because this over 20% sometimes means 21%, and sometimes it means, oh, here's an example from Greene County, means 33%, right? Which is much more significant than 20%. And so that's just something I just want to point out. So yeah, again, make sure you're not hesitant to click the map here. So it says, we have a question, can you browse businesses by NAICS code or occupations by SIC code? So we do have some NAICS code information, and so that's something that we can look up. We can search, for example, the word business, and you can see here that it gives you some information about different types of businesses. So the county business patterns, or CBP, it gives us some of those information. We have some, let's see, restaurants and such. I'm not sure exactly about the NAICS code, but I can look that up and let you guys know in the future. So, but you can get some of those other, the county business pattern information, and then we also have business vacancies and such. So at this point, we have one layer on a map, and I can add data. So at any time, you can add additional layers to the map. So we can just do that same search again and see what we get for businesses. I can add, for example, we'll just say pharmacies and drugstores by county, and click add to map here. And you'll see now that it's going to layer then that rate of pharmacies and drugstores by county on top of our population below poverty layer. And so you'll be able to sort of see both layers here. And I think my Zoom might be slowing down my load times here. But nonetheless, you can add basically as many layers as you want to a map like this. It can get pretty busy at times, but nonetheless, here you can see I've added some public housing developments. Oh, there's that other layer showing up. And so I can actually drag and drop that pharmacy layer then here to the top. I can look at it at a zip code level, those types of things, and you can see how it sort of changes on the map. A lot of times people want to layer 2 polygon layers at one time, and I always encourage folks to label one and turn the transparency all the way up, and then you can basically see 2 polygon layers at one time. So in addition to just being able to add, layers to the map, here up at the top, we also have a series of reference maps. So if you wanted to do things like add place names or highways, folks always sort of know where they are in relation to the nearest highway. County boundaries, we can actually label the counties themselves. Place boundaries, so any major metropolitan areas, you can add there as well. So those are just some additional types of reference layers that you can add to the map. We also have some advanced mapping tools. So you can click this tools button up here on the left-hand side, and we can do things like query the data, right? So here under this query option, here it says, public housing developments. I could select any of these layers. I'll just stick with public housing developments as an example. And I can click on average monthly rent and say, I want to see all of the public housing developments that have an average monthly rent greater than $200. So you can see here that it ran that query, and I got about 5 results. And so I can quickly pull, for example, an attribute table of all of those public housing developments. I can see their average monthly rent, the number of total residents, any of the metadata that we have associated with the layer will then populate. And I can download this data into an Excel file and use that as a starting point for conversations. I can use it, you know, to download or upload into another mapping software or data analysis software as well. So that's sort of a quick overview. Oh, let me go through the rest of the tools here. So that was the query data tool. We also have a select data feature, which allows you also to pull down data into an Excel file. So if I wanted to see sort of poverty rates, I can draw just a polygon. It's going to select all of the census tracts that my polygon touches. And again, I can get then census tract information, poverty information for those census tracts I've selected, and download that again into Excel. We also have some measurement tools. So if you guys are working with anybody who wants to measure cropland, for example, anything along those lines, you can get geographic coordinates, so lat-longs. You can measure paths between, you know, a public housing development and a farmer's market, for example, or this measure area would allow you to, if you wanted to zoom in, you could, you know, you could measure an area or a land area within the county, get the number of acres, the number of square miles, those types of things as well. So looks like there's a question. So let me see if I can get my chat to come back up. There is a satellite view, yes, and I failed to show that in the reference map. So this little hamburger menu here, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see here that it does give us the satellite view. And so I could, for example, zoom into, you know, pretty closely into an area of land. If I wanted, again, to do that measure area tool, I can do that pretty easily here on a plot of land and be able to get, again, the acreage and those types of things as information in an output. So in addition to that, we also have some graphics, you know, so if you wanted to put an arrow on the map, you can draw an arrow. So this is the piece of land that we're interested in. You can do a freehand polygon or a line segment. So if you wanted to draw sort of transportation lines, utility lines, those kinds of things, you could add those in as well. We also have a mask tool, which I find to be a pretty cool feature because it allows you to just sort of zoom into or select an area, right, to highlight. So this is nice if you are doing, you know, any sort of presentation and you want to pull these maps into a PowerPoint and you want to say, I'm just really interested in this one specific area. This mask tool sort of makes it nice, and you can modify the transparency so you can hide everything, or you can show just a little bit of what's around there as well. And then in addition to that, so we do have a locality finder. This will give you, if you select anything, it'll give you township, section, range. It'll also give you information like school district, Senate district, congressional district as well. So is there a way to add custom labels on the map? I don't think that we have a custom within here. I don't think you can do text of any kind. But no, so no, not at this time, not custom labels at this time. So we do have, what I was going to show next is we do have the ability to share these maps very easily via social media, email, or just get a direct map link. And then we have the ability to export them either as image files or PDF documents. So anytime I want to make special notes on a map, I typically will download it as an image file and pull it into, I mean, you can use Preview if you have a Mac, you can use PowerPoint, you know, those types of things to add those additional notations at any time. So not always the best when you have to take 2 steps to do something, but yes. Is there a way to export an image of just the map without taking, yes. So that's this export function right here. So here you can see the options are map image only. You can get a map and a legend, or the legend image only. And again, those options are really nice if you're pulling these into documents or PowerPoint presentations. Sometimes it's not always great to have the legend as part of the map. It can be hard to read. And so if you pull map image only and legend image only, then you can sort of modify the sizes of those so they best meet the parameters either of your document or of the PowerPoint that you're working on. So that's really a quick overview of the map room. You can clear the map and start from scratch at any time. I find that to be helpful because sometimes you add, 5 or 6 layers and things get really messy. As I mentioned, we do have just a wealth of data within the system, and so would recommend that you spend some time sort of seeing what's there. We're adding new data all the time. Part of our charge with All Things Missouri is really to focus less on those national secondary sources and focus more on state level sources. And so we have been pulling information, for example, from Merrick, from DESE, from the Department of Health and Senior Services, those state level organizations that are producing information just for the state of Missouri. And so in addition to those, we still do have all of those national secondary layers as well. And it's really nice to be able to sort of marry those together and look at them side by side, all within one mapping tool here. So I will go back to the home page and show you a little bit about our reporting environment. So that was really the mapping portion. So reports, when we built this site, we were supported by University of Missouri Extension to do so. And so we used their 4 major impact areas in order to sort of categorize and create some of the reports. So you can see here we have 4 reports: ag and environment, business and community, health and safety, and then youth and family. I imagine that you guys are going to be most interested in this business and community report, but just wanted to point out that we do have these other reports available, and they do include other types of indicators. And so what we've tried to do here is really curate the indicators based on the topic. But this is built on our national reporting environment for community needs assessments and community health needs assessments that we offer on our CARES Engagement Network, which is our national platform. But basically what this does is it allows you first to select a county, or we have extension regions here. So you can go down and we can say we want to look at Christian County, right? We could add additional counties if we were interested, for example, in seeing Greene County. I know that's next to you guys. And so can create sort of a custom area, right, by selecting more than one county. And then we get into the data indicators. And so here you can see we have a series of indicators, again, that we've curated or selected that are most related to the business and community topic. So we have things like change in total population, Hispanic population, age 65 and over, urban and rural, veterans, some of those special populations, right? And again, just like within the map room where we searched, you can see as I hover over some of these, I'm getting that little I button again. So I'm able to see data attributes. I get a quick view on a map of what this data looks like. And then if we have it by any of those additional population groups, age, race, gender, ethnicity, that's noted. And then again, a link back to the original source and the date that it was published. And so at this point, I can select all indicators. So we have this nice button at the top that says, just give me all of them. I could select an entire category by clicking the checkbox next to the category. Or I can go through and I can select individual indicators that I'm most interested in. And that allows for you to really create sort of a custom output, right? So you can see as we move through these categories, next is income. So we have some nice, different income levels, median family income, median household income. Again, there's some nice differentiation between those two. Children eligible for free and reduced price lunch. We get into workforce, so things like travel patterns, job earnings by sector, labor force participation, unemployment rates. Broadband has also been a big issue that I think we've all been working on, so we have some broadband data as well that's included. And then some social factors, things like high school graduation rate, different types of housing cost burden, and then food security. So here you can see I've sort of made just a quick sub-selection of indicators in which to create a report. So the next thing I would do is click this reports button here at the bottom, and we have a couple of output options. Most likely you're always going to look at this comprehensive report, but I did want to point out that we do have a quick facts, which is sort of just a series of data tables for the indicators that you've selected. So if you just want sort of a quick, one page, 2-pager, this is a great way to go. You can export the data to an Excel file, so that's nice, again, to pull into other data analysis software. And then we do have a source and methodology appendix. So if you are writing a grant or a report where you'd like to cite these sources and these data, we've done some of that citation work for you within the source and methodology link. So I'm going to go ahead, though, and just click open here on this comprehensive report. And what you see is very quickly the report is generated on your page, and we're able to explore the indicators that we've selected. So the first indicator that I selected just happened to be this population age 65 and over. You can see here that it gives us a nice, what we consider a stem sentence, right? So we can see information about this specific indicator in context of the geography that we've selected. So this is looking at both Christian and Greene County at this time. And then we get that same information reported to us in a data table. So here, this report location line is going to be an aggregate of Christian and Greene County. And then we get to see the actual county values individually. And then we benchmark to the state of Missouri and the rest of the United States. So we can sort of start to see, okay, it looks like Greene County has a higher rate than Christian County when it comes to percent population over 65, but both of them are still higher or around what, the United States is averaging. You can get more details about the indicator, so there's a link again with the data background and methodology under the data table. You can click this view larger map to see, it'll open up in that map room that we were just in if you wanted to explore this indicator within the map room. And then this is an example of an indicator that we have that does have some of those population breakouts. So we can see here as we scroll down, population by gender, population by ethnicity. So who are the folks that are over 65 that are Hispanic or Latino? And then we note all of the major census groups, ethnicities or race. So white, Black, African American, Asian, some other race, multiple race. So those are the delineations that are given to us. People often ask for others, and we say, well, the data just aren't available at a granular geography anyway. So you can see that's sort of how every single indicator within this report is laid out. Again, this nice stem sentence. We have a data table that reports the aggregate and then the individual county benchmark to the state of Missouri and the United States, the inset map, and then any additional information that we have here. Down at the bottom, we have this nice little round hamburger menu, so I can click that, and what it's going to do is it's going to pull up a full list of all the indicators that I've selected for my report, and I can sort of jump then between indicators very easily because this is just one long scroll page, right? So if I come down to something like children eligible for free and reduced price lunch, again, I can see, within the report area, how many public school students there are, how many of them are eligible for free and reduced price lunch. If I were sort of doing community level work, right, it's very helpful, again, to be able to see the aggregate, but then also those individual county breakouts, right? If I were working to, reduce the number of students living in poverty that would be eligible for this, I'd probably want to spend more time here in Greene County than I would in Christian County, right? We also have a nice dial on this one that sort of tells us, again, how we're doing in comparison to the state of Missouri and the rest of the United States. And this is interactive. So if I wanted to just compare my report location to the United States, I'd simply click on Missouri, and Missouri would go away. I can turn it back on. This is also an example of an indicator that we have that's been collected consistently over time, and so we are able to produce results as change over time. So you can see here from 2010 to 2017, we're able to look at those rates, and you can see that here also in this nice line chart. Again, these are interactive data visualizations, and so if I didn't want to actually look at Greene County and I just wanted to look at Christian and Missouri and the United States, I could simply click that Greene County name here at the bottom, and I would instead just now see Christian, Missouri, and the rest of the United States. Looks like I had a question come in, so let me see if I can get my Zoom chat to pop up again. Can we add an area to the comparison wheel? Example, Greene County. Oh, I see up here. So right now, what we have available is you could do that. You could show just Greene County just by creating a report for Greene County, and it would benchmark it then to Missouri and the United States. At this time, we don't have sort of front-end functionality for you to select what shows up here, but we do have in the works what we're calling our build and share report, where you would actually get to select the data visualizations for each of the indicators that you've selected, and that we're hoping that'll be done like later in December of this year. So stay tuned is what I'll say there. So right now, no, you can't do it this way. Like again, if you were to create just a report for Greene County, it would show Greene here and then Missouri and then the United States, but you wouldn't get that Christian County, right? So I think that's what you were asking. So yeah, so again, these are all interactive, so feel free to play around with them. But I did want to show, I think, this labor force or job earnings by sector. This is one of the newer indicators that we've pulled in that I think is pretty useful. You're able to see sort of all of the different job sectors, so mining, construction, manufacturing, and then you get sort of those, right, the job earnings by sector. You can see for Christian and Greene and then Missouri and the rest of the United States. Did want to point out, if you ever see no data, it means there were no data reported, and so therefore we're not able to report any values for that data table. And sometimes you'll see suppressed data, and so those are typically around a lot of our health indicators. And a good example of a suppressed data set would be something like teen births, right? In a rural county like Christian, there may be only 2 or 3 teen births in any given year. And so if we were to report that number 3, likely that person or those persons would be personally identifiable, and we want to refrain from doing that when possible. And so if the value is less than 5, we will suppress that data rather than reporting no data, because that would be inaccurate, but instead it would be suppressed data. So with these reports, again, this is just an example from the Business and Community Indicator Report. There are other indicators included in Ag and Environment, again, Health and Safety, and Youth and Family. So encourage you to take a look and see what other indicators are in there if you're looking for something. You can download this as a PDF, so get a nice download PDF document of this full report. All of the data visualizations, the inset maps, those will all come into that PDF document. So it should look almost exactly like it does on the screen here. It is a little, I think, more narrow when you PDF it, but nonetheless, it's still a very nice report to have. You can share it. I always joke these probably aren't the greatest things to share on social media. Not super exciting, but nonetheless, we've made it easy for you to do so. You can also email it to others, so folks can interact with the data or look through it online as well. We have a nice print button, and then again, you can export it to Excel if you're interested in doing some additional analysis there. So that's an example. It's a quick 3-step process really for that reporting environment, and they all look and function exactly the same. So you would go through here. This is the Ag and Environment report, right? Same process. Select the county that you were interested in, select the indicators that you're interested in, and then you would be able to create that report output at the end there. So, so those are the 2 maps and reports part of the site. the final one is this tools and resources section. So as I scroll down, you'll see here, this isn't the only set of tools that CARES provides publicly. And so we have curated some to include down here that we felt would be most relevant to the folks working in and across Missouri. So this first one is our Vulnerable Populations Footprint tool, which looks at sort of the hot spots or intersections of educational attainment and poverty. So you can use that alongside other data layers, right, to sort of look at those most vulnerable populations. I did want to spend a second on this Building Regional Resilience tool. So this is, I think, of interest to probably people working in community and economic development, because what it is it's pretty much, again, all of our reporting systems are built sort of on this same platform. So if you know how to use one, you should be able to use them all. But here you can see that I can select Missouri and then go down to Christian County. And basically what this report is looking at is both resilience and vulnerability indicators. And so you can see down here, these are all of the underlying data. We're looking at things like crime, drought, drinking water access, home ownership, uninsured populations, mobile homes. And really what this is getting at is asking the question, you know, if we were to have a disaster or some sort of, you know, major event in our community today that caused, you know, some despair, how long would it take us to get back to today's, you know, conditions? So economically, socially, you know, those kinds of things. And so you can see here that it gives everybody sort of a score of, you know, how resilient are you by social factors, how resilient are you by economic factors, and then you can sort of see what indicators go into that score. So births, diversity, labor force participation. And what I think is most interesting about this, when we first rolled this tool out, one of the things I would have never thought about is, you know, if you had a major weather event of some sort, you know, how many, you know, is there one bridge that everybody would need to cross to leave the county? You know, how stable or how old is that bridge? That's been sort of a big topic of conversation in Missouri. You know, or how many mobile homes are in your area? Those are homes that would likely not make it through or be more damaged if you had displaced people from the mobile home parks. You know, where would you put them? How long would it take them? How long would it take you to get them back into you know, conditioned housing, you know, those kinds of things. So I think this is a really great tool to sort of have some of those conversations around community resiliency. We also have this District Explorer tool. And so basically what this is, it's hard to explain in a sense. It's really looking at the intersection of different types of districts around our state. And so we have plans to add additional districts to this. But basically you can see here we have things like county, school district, congressional districts. We just added regional planning commission districts. And so if I were to click on any of these, what you would see here is it tells me, so who is the regional planning commission? Who are the county commissioners in this area? What are the school districts? And this is nice because it tells you sort of how many residents are within each school district, how many are within each state Senate district, state house district, and it gives you all of that sort of information as well. So I look at this as sort of a stakeholder identification tool. If I wanted to place a new program, project, building in any given area, who are the actors, who are the players that I would need to bring to the table and have a conversation with about how this would affect sort of that, you know, that district. And so, like I said, we're looking at bringing in things like fire districts, ambulance hospital districts, DNR, MoDOT, you know, it seems like every government agency sort of has a district that we could pull in here. So we just added those RPCs and hope to get some more in there as well. I think there's some other tools in here like AgSite. this is helpful for anybody who's looking to buy agriculture land. It gives you information about things like soil types, endangered species, any environmental impacts around flooding or drought, those kinds of things. So a lot of farmers use this when they're considering purchasing land. It also tells you some production, some crop production statistics. And then we have sort of a small economic snapshot report, some ag opportunities in Missouri, zip code level health rankings. These are just some additional tools and resources down here. So with that, I've been talking for about 45 minutes or so, so I'm going to stop and encourage you guys, if you want to unmute yourselves, please do so, and I'm happy to answer any questions or show any, if you want me to demonstrate anything again, happy to do that as well.
Well, Jamie, this is, oh, Sarah, you might want to turn, there's lots of things happening. So this is Andrea Seitz from Show Me Christian County.
Yeah.
And first of all, this is an amazing tool, and thank you to you for walking us through this, and to MU Extension for putting this together.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing. One of my big questions is there a way from the business perspective to look at existing business clusters that are existing in your area, you know, to really drill down on which businesses or industries are most prevalent, instead of just kind of the select few that you can look at? Is there a way to do that? Do you know?
So, not that I know of in particular. So if you're looking for like point level information, right, of the actual businesses themselves and their business types, I don't think that we have that level of granularity in here, but you all being, you know, part of the area and having connections to the chamber and such, if you have a business list, we do have data upload capabilities that we currently have sort of behind, it's behind the scenes. We haven't made them publicly available, but nonetheless, we would be able to upload that list of businesses, and then we could create sort of a taxonomy if we wanted to code them, you know, as, you know, retail versus manufacturing versus services versus restaurants or whatever, to be able to see that on a map and sort of do that a little bit more manually. And that would actually probably provide you with more accurate information than we could get from, you know, a national or even state level source if you do have anything you could tap into at the local level.
Sure. That's why I'd ask about the NAICS codes, because that's really one thing that I'm kind of struggling with right now, is finding and building those existing clusters. So I really appreciate the insight. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? It looks like Anna raised her hand.
Yeah. Hi, Jamie. At the very beginning, you mentioned that as of now, there is no login or credentials needed to view this information. Is that the plan for the future, or will this always be kind of publicly available?
So the map room itself with the full set of data is always, like, we've made it our mission to always have that be publicly available and publicly accessible. And the reporting tools as you see them now, and I think that build and share report that we're going to roll out in December, that's all going to stay publicly available. What we're going to likely put behind a username and password here in the coming months is that data upload capability. And that's because there's obviously some data governance sort of considerations around, you know, allowing people just to upload whatever they want. And so we want to make sure that we've sort of got a handle on what's being uploaded and who it's being uploaded by. And then there may be some additional collaboration tools that we put behind a username and password. So for example, if Christian County wanted to have a protected space, right, on All Things Missouri, where you all could collaborate, right, and work together on building some reports or a series of maps, or even sharing some data between your organizations, obviously we would need you to have a username and password to associate who's in that group and who can access what and those kinds of things. So we see that all being sort of behind a username and password. But basically everything that you see here today, we're not going to ever put behind any sort of paywall or firewall. It will continue to be free.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions here? Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording at least. And let's see.